Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Supreme Court Justice safe and in his home, well protected from a mad gunman. Thank goodness that mad gunman called local police saying he was having suicidal thoughts. They were able to dispatch police to intercept. He has been arrested, charged with attempted murder, and of course, the rules we put into place to protect our justices. Now, this person did have a gun, did have a suitcase, was angry about the leaked memo, so crisis averted, I guess. This has got Mitch McConnell saying we got to do something to protect our Supreme Court justices. Got to move quickly. Can I just throw it out there? Can we move this quickly for our kids? As I tweeted out earlier, Brett Kavanaugh can feel safe when our kids feel safe. Sorry, I'm not saying people should go rushing to Brett Kavanaugh's house, but priorities, folks, priorities. We're in a moment right now, and this is not, I can't believe we have to talk about this, but it doesn't seem the sense of urgency is the same. Doesn't seem like we the people matter much to the McConnells and the folks in our halls of power. Boy, when it's one of them, when it's their ilk, immediate action. How quickly did they move forth on a piece of legislation to protect the Supreme Court justices? We still don't have what we need for our kids, do we? No. They've ramped up protection for all of the justices. They've ramped up protection. What about our kids? Now, look, I'm not one to say, hey, go after. I'm not. It's not what I'm saying. I am saying that we need to be doing more. Now, the House of Representatives, they did their jobs today. Passed a piece of legislation that, we desperately need. The Protect Our Children Act. Protecting Our Kids Act. Simple. Would do a couple of simple things that need to be done. Raise the age, the purchasing age to buy a semi-automatic weapon. And I would argue not have someone buy it for you and then, here, you can have it. Also, it would there'd ban the import, sale, manufacture, transfer, and possession of large capacity magazines. Again, this is one of those, it seems kind of almost a no-brainer to me, because this seems to be an ongoing problem. Would establish and regulate storage of firearms on residential premises. I got to see the details in this. I think this is going to get a huge blowback. Create penalties for violations. Something I've said for a very long time. Create responsibility. If you have a gun in the home, that gun is misused, you are responsible. We aren't that society anymore. We don't seem to hold people accountable and responsible for things anymore. This may be a way forward. Seems sane, seems reasonable, probably why it's not going to happen. Also, they're going to build on bans of ghost guns, bump stocks, things like that. All of this stuff seems fairly reasonable to me. That's why it's probably not going to pass. It will die in the Senate, and everyone seems to agree that that's going to happen. The vote was 223 to 204, mostly on party lines. You had 5 Republicans, Anthony Gonzalez of Ohio, who is no longer going to be in Congress after the end of this term, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Adam Kinzinger, who also will no longer be in Congress at the end of this, Chris Jacobs and Fred Upton of Michigan, Jacobs of New York. 2 Democrats voted against it, Kurt Schrader of Oregon and Jared Golden of Maine. This going to probably die in the Senate. The Senate is working on its own package, something I'm sure that is going to be much more watered down. Going to happen. And I think this is where my concern is. My concern is the Democrats have to get something. There has to be some kind of legislation that gets through, and they're going to agree to just about anything, I think, and just to get it through. And it'll depend on what happens in the House as well. I'm hoping for some teeth in this, because here's where my fear is. My fear is we go, hooray, we got something done. It's going to get watered down. It's going to have very little teeth. It's going to have very little action to it. And then the next time something happens, and there will be a next time, the gun crowd is going, see, didn't work. And this is what happens when you do half measures. When you get half measures, you set yourself up for what you know is coming. We see this movie. Let's not fall into that trap. That's simple. That's simple for me. So on this gun issue, I'm hoping they get it right. I'm hoping they do the right thing. I'm hoping the Senate does come around, because there's been some talk of maybe possibly, there's a lot of high hopes that this time Lucy's going to leave the football for Charlie Brown. I'm not buying it. Let's get a call from Julie in Minneapolis, listening on KTNF AM 950 in Minneapolis. Julie, what's on your mind?
Hi, Rick. I'm a little skeptical like you. I'm a little cynical. I'm glad they're working on it. I hope something happens, but hope, what is the old saying? Hope is not a strategy. The strategy is voting. What is the strategy, though, to get the non-voters, tens of millions of people? Some of them came out because they couldn't stand Trump, and, hey, I'm going to vote for Biden because Biden is not Trump. What can we do to inspire people to vote on this gun issue? What do you think it would take? What do you think are some good ideas? I'll hang up and listen.
I appreciate the call, Julie. I mean, ultimately, the reality is I listened to Matthew McConaughey's speech yesterday, and look, I'm not a huge Matthew McConaughey fan. There's some crazy stuff that he does, but he was spot on yesterday when he was telling stories of these children. If that doesn't move you into saying, we need some action, if listening to the story about the little girl and her green Converse tennis shoes, and that being the way that the family had to identify that body, if that doesn't move you to say these weapons shouldn't be in the hands of just anyone, if that doesn't move you to some kind of action, if not to protect your own children, I mean, if you don't care about somebody else's, what about your own children or your own grandchildren or yourself? This stuff is happening way too frequently. And I know I've got friends who say, well, this is the cost of living in a free society, Rick. No, it's not. The founding fathers never envisioned the kind of weaponry that we have at our disposal. They never imagined the kind of destructive capacity that is at our fingertips. And I've talked about this before. Every one of us agree on gun control. Everyone agree that there should be. The conversation we're not having right now is where we draw the line. We're being led, and this is masterful tacticians at work, distracting us from what really the problem is here. The problem is the ease of access of military-grade weaponry that are made for killing people. I'm sorry, this AR-15... this is not made for you to go out and hunt squirrel with or feral pigs. Sorry, that's not what it's for. This is a machine of carnage. And we've got to have that conversation. I'm not talking about the father and son who go out and with the .22 in the backyard and shoot cans off the fence, or talking about the weapons that are meant for killing. Pure and simple. And I've said this before. I grew up in an area where if you saw somebody with a gun, run. Somebody's going to die. Had you put, and I think back to my own childhood, had you put that weapon in my hands at that age, who knows what I would have been capable of doing given any number of situations. The easy and availability of these things in desperate moments creates opportunities for what we've seen, what we're seeing. And I'm sorry, I don't think we should have these things so easily available. I think you have a right absolutely to it, but that right should come with some barrier, some obstacle that you have to meet. There should be some training involved in this. You should be required to, I believe in the well-regulated part of this. The fact that I can go and I can grab one of these things and have absolutely no training whatsoever and walk around with it in the rest of civil society without any concern for others is stupid. I've said this a couple of times. I'll probably say it a couple hundred more times. I watched this video of this Rittenhouse kid with an automatic weapon. And I'm going, the founders could not have fathomed that kind of power in the hands of someone like that. Or worse. So for me, this is about having a conversation. If I don't want to infringe on someone's right to protect themselves or protect their homes or whatever it is that they do, but there's a moment where you go, there's a line. And the conversation should be where that line is, not all the distractions about, should a schoolhouse have only one door? Is it about, should we show pictures or shouldn't we? There's so much here. And for me, it's about the gun. And this is where I think we need to have that conversation and engage people. And engage them on, how do we keep our kids safe? The fact that there are 19 little boys and girls who went to school with hopes and dreams, 19 little boys and girls who had futures ahead of them, that ended in one bloody day, with families that are now going to be tortured for the rest of their days. If that doesn't motivate you, if that doesn't touch your soul, if that doesn't viscerally move you to action, I don't know what to say and what to do. For me, as someone who is compassionate, empathetic, I don't know what else can move you. As someone who has 3 kids of my own who cannot imagine what it would be like to have to wake up the next day without one of them, I don't know. I don't know what would then motivate you to say, hey, sorry you lost that kid there in the most horrific way possible, but it's my right. It's my right. It's the cost of your loss is the cost of my freedom. I don't know. How do you make that argument to someone? If you've got a thought, I'd love to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. You can also email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm not sure how you make that. Although the NRA, I'm sure, and the gun owners of America, I'm sure they've got a PR line and a distraction and maybe a bulletproof backpack that would maybe help ease our pain. Crazy stuff. Quick break, right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Our quote of the day, North Carolina Lieutenant Governor. And this, again, is one of those moments where you go, exactly why? But the North Carolina Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, said, when we are called to be led by men. By men, he says, God sent women out when they had to do their thing, but when it was time to face down Goliath, they sent David, not Davida. David. I love the religious people. Speaking of crazy religious people, put this guy on your calendar. Pastor Dylan Oz, that's his name, A-W-E-S, Oz, of the Steadfast Baptist Church in Hurst, Texas. According to the pastor in Hurst, Texas, every gay person should be lined up and shot in the back of the head. And, the first thing, I thought a couple of things, to be honest. The first thing is, wow, you protest too much. Hiding something there, buddy? Put him on the calendar. A couple of years, we may be hearing a lot about him. The second thing is, what a coward. You're going to shoot him in the back of the head, not even going to look him in the eye. That's these folks right here. But the weird thing is, using the Bible as his justification. You never mind that those rules that they want plastered everywhere. Thou shalt not murder. They're advocating mass murder. Yeah, and they're doing it with guns. So you think you're going to get help from the Christians, or at least these crazy ones? Let's go to the phone. It's got Alice on line one. Alice, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing. I am just flabbergasted, but not really, that these whack jobs, and let's just be blunt, they are whack jobs, can sit there on their pulpit or on Fox News or ON or Newsmax or wherever, their own little podcast, and literally say, we're going to go out and we're going to kill the witches and go kill the gays and we're going to kill the transgendered and the Democrats, and nothing happens. But then, they all just blow it off, and they're like, oh, well, theatrics. And then you end up with some person that goes to Kavanaugh's house, and they just about go spastics. But never mind that there's little kids being slaughtered and teachers being slaughtered and the whole 9 yards. But, we just have to keep those Christian values. What values they are, I have no clue, because I'm at the point it's like, I'm confused here. What values are we espousing today? Because you're telling me one thing, doing another, and I'm confused. But I guess we're all confused, Rick, so yeah. I don't know.
No, it is what it is. What's the Gandhi was reported of saying? I like your Christ, your Christians not so much?
Exactly. That's exactly he said. I like your Christ, but not your Christianity. I don't like it so much, or something like that. You were right, in the gist of the matter. But I truly have come to the conclusion, and of course, some of my local whack jobs, because our little rural county has been taken over by the new religious right, and they're literally sending people things in the mail. I, honest to God, opened a letter. I was like, who in the hell's this from? I opened it up, and it was like, do you know Jesus? I was like, are you kidding me? But, I was ready to write him back and go, I didn't know he was lost. But it's just insane. And they told me, while I was speaking to one in the shop and save, and they had on, the paraphernalia and the whole 9 yards, and they were telling me basically that, our nation is just, we need to get back to those Christian values, because that's what the founding fathers, and my husband's poking me in the back going, keep your mouth shut, don't, and I just, I was boiling. You have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. And just don't get shot in the parking lot. But no, this is one of those things, and these are the people who tell us that, follow us, follow our example, look at us. This is what's scary. I always believed religion was about making us better, making us want to be better people. When I grew up in the Catholic Church, it was about peace and social justice and love thy neighbor and your brother's keeper and all of those things, extending a hand. This is crazy. This guy literally came out and said, what does God say the answer is? The answer is the solution for homosexuality in 2022. He says it's here in the New Testament in the book of Romans. They are worthy of death, he says. These people should be put to death. Every single homosexual in our country should be charged with the crime, the abomination of homosexuality that they have. They should be convicted at a lawful trial with him on the jury. They should be sentenced to death. They should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. That's what God teaches, he said. And I'm sitting here going, who in their right mind listens to this blather? It's one thing for some crackpot to be spewing this at the front of the whatever it is that they have. It's one thing for him to be shooting off like this kind of insanity. It's a whole nother thing to have people sitting, listening, and absorbing this and nodding their head with their mouths open, absorbing it. This is a problem. And I would argue, and at some point we've got to get to a point where there's got to be some accountability for this kind of language, this kind of incitement of violence against people. There's something seriously wrong with Pastor Dylan Oz. Now, like I said, is this his cry for help? Is this him, hiding himself deep in some dark closet? Which, hey, Dylan, come on out. You're okay. You'll be fine. You don't have to project so much. And then the perversion of the Bible. I mean, I don't know which book he's reading, but it's not the same one I grew up reading. What happened to love thy neighbor? What happened to feeding the hungry and healing, helping the sick and visiting the imprisoned? And what happened to helping the downtrodden? Not kicking them, not abusing. I'm struggling because we are becoming this. I would argue we are this society that is horribly abusive. And mentally deranged. I mean, this is a sickness. This is a sickness. And anybody who goes to this Steadfast Baptist Church, you need to get some help. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled them a hate group. I got to tell you, judging from that, I don't know how you can come up with anything else. I don't know how you come up with anything else. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. It's crazy stuff. If you miss any of today's program or any of our programs, make sure you download the podcast at the website or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Quick break, right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day the Granite Mountain and Speculator mines in Butte, Montana, caught fire, killing 168 miners. It is considered the worst underground hard rock mining disaster in the nation's history. Just weeks after the U.S. had entered World War I, the demand for copper had surged. Granite Mountain, like many of the nation's mines, operated around the clock to meet war production needs. In his book, Fire and Brimstone, The North Butte Mining Disaster of 1917, Michael Punke notes the irony of the disaster, which began as an effort to improve safety. A sprinkler system had just been installed. The final task was the relocation of an electrical cable. The cable was insulated with oil-soaked cloth sheathed in lead. Workers lost control of the 3-ton cable as they lowered it into the mine and it fell to the bottom of the shaft. Carrying a commonly used carbide-burning lamp, the night shift foreman accidentally ignited the cable as he planned its removal. The conflagration was virtually immediate and burned for more than 3 days. At the time, 415 miners were at work on the overnight shift. Smoke and gases quickly filled both mines. With no alarm system in place, those that could not escape succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. In 1996, a memorial plaza was dedicated to those who lost their lives. It details a slice of Butte's mining and labor history that culminated in tragedy.
The suffering and the pain we remember to this day. The
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Rick Smith here, host of The Rick Smith Show. You know, Father's Day is just around the corner. And if your dad is as hard to find a gift for as my wife and kids claim that I am, here's a little gift-giving wisdom from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. It's true. We do. Every holiday in my house, it's the same thing. Dad, what do you want for this holiday? And, I always give the same thing. Give me a hug and spend a little time with me. I don't need ties or cologne or any of that stuff. And now, thanks to Omaha Steaks, they ask, Dad, what do you want? Steaks. Give me the Dads Want Steaks package. Just go to omahasteaks.com, type Rick Smith in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. And for just $99, this limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees that I love, and I guarantee he'll love too. The smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the gourmet jumbo franks, their air-chilled, boneless chicken breast, and of course my favorite, the thick, delicious, boneless pork chops. And to finish it off, the sweet finish of it all, the delicious caramel apple tartlets. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type Rick Smith in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These are awesome. You throw them on the grill, cook them to perfection. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever, a whopping 6 ounces. So this Father's Day, don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. In fact, don't just order one. Get 2 Dads Want Steaks packages. One for him and one he can share with you. Just go to omahasteaks.com and type Rick Smith in the search bar and get the Dads Want Steaks package. You won't regret it. I guarantee it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this Dylan Oz, I hate to even call him a pastor, but this whole, we just got to kill the gays. At least Ohio is not talking about killing the gays and the transgenders. They just want them to drop their drawers and inspections. I guess that's the new thing that's going on, because I think Ohio is going to have their own hate transgender athletes bill coming up soon. And I guess they're going to carry curtains around where they're going to do inspections, some kind of craziness like this. Is there nothing else in Ohio that has to be done? Are there no roads and bridges? Are there no education facilities that need to be redone? Is there nothing in Ohio that needs to be done, or anywhere else? I don't know. I'm here to share some thoughts on maybe Ohio's perfect, and we have time to go do other crazy stuff. That's why I've asked David Pepper to come talk with us. David's a former chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party, also the author of Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Good to be back with you.
So am I getting this right? We're going after the transgenders, and the athletes going to set up little curtain areas to do inspections on demand.
Yeah, it passed the Ohio State House. Now, let's hope it doesn't pass the Senate or the governor sign it. But yeah, it's insanity. It wasn't just a ban. It was basically, if somebody suspects that any girl on a high school or any age team, if they somehow think that their performance, sticks out in a way that they should get a test, they can demand it. And they go through a multi-stage process that includes, I don't even like to talk about it, but physical, external, and internal inspections of that girl's genitals. I mean, that is literally what they passed. And I believe every single Republican member of the House voted yes. It's off the charts nuts.
As a parent, I don't even know how I would react to that other than with just absolute anger. I mean, especially,
I agree.
Especially if your daughter isn't, especially if because how many transgender athletes do you have in the entire state?
One.
You got one.
There was one. And because of the one, and obviously you're seeing literally transgender kids talk about suicide around the country. So the bullying of those kids is awful. But we're talking about subjecting, hundreds, thousands of girls all around this state to some state. This is Orwell wouldn't think of this for his book. It's so over the top. But again, they have a specific process outlined, and they pass the bill. And we'll see. I think the outrage, I hope, although it doesn't stop other terrible ideas. But again, they voted yes, and this is my view is this is why it's so important that Democrats get smart about running in every district, because no one who passed that bill in the next election should get a pass. No one should have an uncontested race. Everyone in their district should know they voted for that, because every parent, and I say this as a father of two boys who I just put to bed, 5 and 8-year-old, every parent in this state should be appalled, disgusted, and disturbed that people voted for this. And there aren't a lot of issues these days that break through, but they're getting so extreme. They're actually now finding the issues that might cost them elections, even in gerrymandered districts.
Now,
that's why it's on us to challenge them. We can't just talk about it. We got to run against these people everywhere.
I've been saying that for years, but is this only applied to girls?
I can't remember the exact language, but that's sort of the context of it is transgender girls playing, and so that's basically seems to be the worry that's who it apply to. And then and you, by the way, how I don't want to put this on parents and start blaming them. This was the politicians, but think about all the situations where some girl's really performing incredibly well. She's faster than everybody by a lot. Are we going to literally start having like coach challenges of a girl who just happens to be doing a great thing in a sport? I mean, that's literally the prospect that they put together here, and it's appalling.
And having a little tent off to the side, I can't even imagine where this takes us.
I mean, I'll just say this without sounding like some hothead. Again, my kids are sons, but like you come after me and start telling my kid you're gonna do this. No, you're not. I'm sorry. That's not happening in my family. And my guess is most parents would say the same thing. Like, keep far away from my kids with these crazy ideas of yours.
So you got nothing else to do in Ohio then, huh? This is the most important issue of the day?
Well, here is what's happening. And of course, there's so many things to deal with in Ohio right now. And this is going back to this book you mentioned that I wrote. Once you're in a world where almost to a person, these officials never worry about their next election because of gerrymandering. So many of the things that we think people in politics care about, like actually improving public outcomes, no longer matter. They are reelected whether or not they deliver good public outcomes. And so we continue across this country in these gerrymandered state houses, be it Texas or Florida or bills like this. Well, why aren't they working on those things? Because in a world of gerrymandering where every election basically is predetermined, it no longer matters to them if they deliver good public outcomes. If the schools are worse, if wages are lower, if they attack workers, they still get elected because they basically have drawn districts they can't lose. And that's why most of their work these days is no longer at all related to public service. And public outcomes are now disconnected from whether they got reelected. And that's why what you see in states like Ohio is a downward spiral that doesn't stop of extremism, of public outcomes, and of corruption. And going back to what I said before that you said that you agree with, until we start challenging the extremists and saying, no more free passes, we're going to take on your terrible outcomes, we're going to take on your corruption, we're going to take on bizarre extremism like this, they will keep going the wrong way. Right now, they feel like and they say it, no matter what they do, nothing will happen to their career. Until they feel otherwise, it's going to keep happening. We need to stop being shocked about it and start doing something about it.
Yeah, no, Ohio, one of the states that thought they did something about gerrymandering. You thought you passed some good legislation. I think an amendment to bipartisan commission, all kinds of stuff, and yet you've got one of the most gerrymandered maps in the country.
Yeah, they basically ignore. We have a true breakdown of the rule of law in Ohio. It wasn't the perfect reform. I mean, most people would say, and I agree, you'd rather have an independent commission, but we weren't going to get that. That was tried. It didn't happen. But we had clear standards and clear rules. And they, for a year, just violated them. And after the Ohio Supreme Court and a Republican Chief Justice said you violated them, they just kept right on violating them. And we had 2 Trump appointees in a federal court the other day basically say, oh, it's okay. You get to violate the state constitution. So we're in a moment where we literally will have maps thrust on us for at least 2 years that the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled violated the Ohio Constitution multiple times. And again, why do they do that? Because in a world of a real democracy with fair districts, if you passed a law requiring inspections of little girls' genitals, you would lose the next election. And they know it. You can't be as extreme as they are and survive in fair districts. So the leaders especially know we can't be extremists if we have fair districts. So they are willing to violate the law, roll the dice, to continue this whole rigged system. That's what allows them to pass gun laws that are totally out of step with mainstream Ohio. It's what allows them to, we had literally one of the women who passed this inspection bill 2 weeks ago was saying publicly when asked, well, does your abortion ban cover rape? And again, this is disturbing to even repeat these words. She said, well, rape is an opportunity for that woman to deliver a baby. Again, in a fair district, that's the end of your career. You remember a couple of years ago, that's what the Indiana candidate and the Missouri Senate candidate said, and the races ended as soon as they said that. But in this world of gerrymandering, and they know this, they can get away with that stuff and not lose as toxic as their politics may be.
Yeah, Mean Gene Schmidt. Yeah,
exactly.
I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by it at all, to be honest with you. But
no.
But what happened?
You can tell she said that 100 times. It came right out like a talking point.
But what happened to the whole states' right thing? I mean, what happened to didn't they used to believe in that? I mean,
no.
how do you have a federal judge overturn the state's ability to
it's absurd. This is as rogue as Bush v. Gore. These are literally judges that came out of the Federalist Society saying, we don't care that the Ohio Supreme Court struck down these maps as violating the Ohio Constitution. We're going to actually impose an unconstitutional map on the state. So I do think they really, gave up the game here because this is the opposite of federalism. Even John Roberts, a few years ago at a case in Wisconsin, said federal courts should not get involved in partisan gerrymandering. And if it's a matter of state law, that's for the state Supreme Court to decide. I mean, that's only 4 years ago. And this court trashed that precedent, trashed federalism, and said and let's be clear about this. And it sounds over the top, but it's a fact. This is the legislature that's been named by USA Today. Can you hear me?
Yeah, they are the most extreme and the most
corrupt, but corrupt too. We have a massive corruption scandal. So the corruption that led to the corruption scandal is the same corruption that led them to violate the law 5 times when it came to gerrymandering, the same illegal mindset. And a federal court said, we are going to reward your illegality by giving you that unconstitutional map. So a federal court is going along with the nation's most corrupt legislature. So we have a rule of law crisis. I mean, it's hard for me to to literally say to you, and I hate saying this, that we have a rule of law in Ohio. It's gone right now. Now, I do think, by the way, and this is sort of the next step, I honestly believe, so what happened was this legislature didn't even hide the fact their goal was run out the clock, ignore, defy the law for as long as possible, and then force the hand of a court to say, okay, it's too late, you get your legal map. That's what happened. But in running out the clock, let's be clear, they were violating the law the entire time.
Right.
And I think that should be a separate investigation. You don't just get to violate the law. Not only because it's your oath of the Constitution, there's a statute in Ohio, dereliction of duty, that says you can't just violate the law because you feel like it. I believe that the accountability has to still come in, that anyone who was part of this year-long plan to do this should be held accountable under the law, under a separate case.
No, I'm with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with David Pepper, former chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party, also author of Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines. Highly suggest taking a look at that. I saw this story, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. What did Canada ever do to Ohio? What's going on here?
I mean, Lake Erie isn't that big either. It's not like we're declaring, war on a faraway country. It's right in our face. So, yeah, Ohio. The other thing. So it was a banner week for the worst state house in the country. The inspection bill, what Gene Schmidt said the week before, but they passed a bill, or maybe it was a resolution, to add Canada to the watch list for violating freedom of religion, because the Ohio legislature, who's been horrific on COVID, did not like the way that Canada dealt with COVID when it came to their religious institutions. So we haven't put Russia on our watch list, I don't believe, but Canada. It's like that old Michael Moore, Blame Canada, that song. I mean, we literally added
South
Canada
Park,
to
yeah.
the watch list out of Ohio.
Yeah, South Park, Blame Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I literally had images from that old movie where all the fishing boats cross from Britain to Germany. Like, are we going to get an armada and leave Cleveland to cross Lake Erie? I mean, these folks are, again, it goes back to the fundamental point. They're not about public service. They are not. There's no motivation, incentive to be public servants in these rigged systems. It's about extremism, and it's about corruption. And in some, by the way, we had also another thing come up the other day. They not only said arm teachers, they said reduce the hours of training to arm teachers from hundreds to a maximum of 24. Okay. It turns out the chairman of the committee that ran that bill through, and they had like hundreds of teachers testify against it. 2 people testified for it. The guy literally has a business that does gun training. And that's his business, and he's now, ramming. It doesn't disclose it, and that's the bill that goes through his committee. So much of this stuff is both corruption and extremism, and they're sort of inextricably linked. And also, with all of this comes a dramatic decline in most public outcomes you can measure. We're a case study. That's why I wrote that book. We're a case study of what happens when you lose your democracy in a state at your state house level. The downward spiral is fast, and until you get in there and stop it, and I hate to say it, I wish it was only an Ohio story, but you're seeing it play out, in this horrific ways in Texas and Florida, the same story. And it's about a lack of democracy, because once you don't have the democracy, all the incentives that lead to good behavior in a democracy are basically not just gone, they're flipped upside down.
No, and this is where I want to end up, because, the hearing tomorrow, the January 6th Commission's having their first hearing. And, I'm arguing that we're already in the throes of the end of democracy. We had a coup attempt. Nobody's been held really accountable for it. Yeah. I'm curious what you think tomorrow's going to bring, and do you think it's going to matter?
I hope it matters. We need we have an accountability crisis. These are people who, and we've seen it in Ohio, unless there's real accountability, they keep going. And worse than they keep going, they learn from their mistakes. If they can do it again because they were never held accountable, they'll do it better. They'll learn. One of the examples I put in my book is Senate Bill 5, the attack on collective bargaining here in Ohio, that was a disaster. One reason it lost was they included police and fire in that attack. Well, every other state down the road that attacked collective bargaining left out police and fire unions because they learned from why Ohio's failed. So lack of accountability doesn't just lead to them repeating what they did. They actually learn from whatever mistakes they made and do it better. And my worry about January 6th is they're already planning 2024. And the lesson they learned is don't wait so long that you have to attack the Capitol in the first place. Get to these, because that looks so illegitimate, it won't work. People will get cold feet. Get to these legislators long before, change who the Secretary of State are long before, get to the elections officials long before, make it so it never gets to January 6th. That's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
That Eastman memo wasn't burned up and thrown away. It's now being circulated in other ways to get this all. So my worry is unless you have real accountability, again, they're not just going to repeat it because that's what they do. They're going to be better at it. And so they need to be, very strong. And I am a big fan of a lot of people on this committee. And I hats off to Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger for making it bipartisan. But if there is not at some point soon real accountability, not just of the foot soldiers, but higher up the chain, I believe that that's catnip to these people. That they just will keep going. I would think at some point they laugh about it. My God, what do we have to do to be held accountable? But Trump's whole life has been that.
No, absolutely.
So I think this has to be gripping testimony, horrifying details, followed with real accountability for people who we all know the names of.
I'll tell you that. But David, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you.
Always. Thank you.
Good stuff. David Pepper, former Ohio chairman of the Democratic Party there. Also, make sure you check out the book, Laboratories of Autocracy. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Let's take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1904. That was the day that John Carley, a union miner, was shot down in Dunnville, Colorado. Carley was part of a strike in the Cripple Creek gold mining region. The miners had gone out on strike in support of workers at the Standard Mill in Colorado City, which processed the mined ore. Colorado Governor Peabody was determined to break the strike. He called in the state militia, who joined forces with company Army gun thugs, with 1,000 rifles and 60,000 rounds of ammunition to back them up. General Sherman Bell, a veteran of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Rider Squad in the Spanish-American War, led the National Guard. During the strike, one of General Bell's deputies is said to have declared, "To hell with the Constitution! We aren't going by the Constitution." This pretty much summed up General Bell's approach to the conflict. The militia began to round up Union miners. More than 1,500 miners were captured and given a so-called trial by the militia. 238 of these miners were then deported from the region. They were shipped by train to Denver, Kansas, and New Mexico, and warned not to return. The militia learned of a group of pro-union workers at a small encampment known as Dunnville. General Bell loaded up more than 100 militiamen and company deputies on a train and headed for the camp. There they exchanged gunfire with the miners. 65 miners, armed with just 10 guns among them, had little chance against the well-armed company men. John Carley was killed, and 14 miners were arrested. The Union was crushed in the sights of 1,000 guns. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I'm looking forward to the big hearing, and it better be compelling. There better be a lot of evidence, a lot of a lot of information on the lies told by the Trump administration, the who's, the what's, the why's, the how's, all of that. And the money. It's the money. For me, follow the money. I said on January 6th, when all this went down, yeah, we're going to hold accountable all the people who defecated on the floor and broke windows and urinated on desks. We're going to get all the dupes and the idiots and the morons who stormed the Capitol and did that. I want the people who pushed them into it. I want the planners. I want the moneyed interest who bust them there. I want those folks. And I'm hoping that this goes into that. And we expose the names of the billionaires who funded this stuff, the people who took buses from, places like Pennsylvania and drove them down there. And we start talking about the crimes that they committed. And then going after all of the schemes and all of the things that they tried to pull, calling a Secretary of State in Georgia and trying to squeeze them for, hey, check the couch cushions. Maybe you can find some extra votes just laying around. And all of the stuff that went on. The sham attempts at investigations by the Justice Department. There's all this voter fraud out there. We heard Rudy Giuliani and the whole, cabal of crazy running around doing their four-season landscaping press conferences. Never bothered to take any of those claims into a court of law, though. Tells you that they're not stupid. Some of my favorites. Oh, let's seize all the voting machines. Rerun the elections. There's a lot of this stuff. Oh, we just need to delay the election. Because remember, as you're watching this, the goal of the whole day of January 6th was to stop the certification. Remember, stop the steal was the point. It was to stop the official certification of the election. It was to get Mike Pence into that car and get him on a plane somewhere out of town. Chuck Grassley was actually surprised. Couldn't believe he was there. There's got to be some of that stuff. And looking into, what exactly was planned and laying that out and laying it out in a very succinct way. We're going to have to walk through and spoon feed. Now, there's going to be some bingo games. There's going to be obviously some buzzword bingo. Coup, I think we're going to hear a lot. Treason, I think we're going to hear a lot. Trump lies, I think we're going to hear a lot. Because that's what was right in front of us. I do wonder how much Jenny Thomas is going to come up, the Supreme Court Justice's wife. And, there's some other intrigue going into this for me. Does Jared Kushner, does Kush stab Donald in the back? Does he save himself? How much of the testimony of the hundreds of witnesses that they talked to, how many of those people turned on Trump? What's amazing to me, there have been so few leaks out of this commission. There have been no leaks out of the Justice Department. That tells me, at least gives me hope, that there's really something happening. And out of this, and I'm hoping people will pay attention, which is why, again, as I said, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to broadcast as much of it as we can during our time so that we make sure our listeners at least get to hear what goes on during this. And we're going to have some commentary afterwards because I think it's that important. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I want to know what your thoughts are on this and what's going to be the buzzword coming out of it for you.
Get your stuff in order. Get ready for hurricane season.
While we were out, hurricane season kicks off on both coasts with Alex and Agatha. Atmospheric CO2 now at
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.